Let me get to my guest, and that is Congresswoman Ann Wagner. How are you, Ann?
I'm good. Welcome to my world of sleep depravity.
Yeah, no kidding. That's the truth. Here we go again.
I got into D.C. late last night, but it's good to be on with you this morning, Mark. I'm going to have to get used to talking to you in the mornings instead of the afternoons.
That's right. Yeah, a little different schedule for you these days. So tell me, you know what, before we get into a couple of these other things that you've been working on, the SEC ruling on the fiduciary, some of the other things that you and I have been covering, I need to talk for just a minute about what we have going on here in Missouri and Governor Greitens. I know that you were one of the folks that came out, I think, along with Josh Hawley a week or so ago and said that you felt it was probably time for the governor to resign, correct?
Well, you know, what I was clear about was that I thought the governor was unfit to lead our state any further, and I believe that those in elective service are have a higher level of public trust and are called to higher and better standards. And whether the governor resigns or impeaches, impeaches up to him. I mean, only the governor can decide whether he resigns or not, and only the Missouri state legislature can decide what happens in terms of impeachment. So I won't presume to tell them how to do their job, but I know that a panel of 5 Republicans, 2 Democrats in the Missouri House have taken a good look at that, and we'll see where it goes. It's a terrible chapter in our state history, and I find all of these allegations most disturbing. You can have a day in court. I'm all for that. But, I got to tell you what, one at some point I think loses their ability to lead our state government.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, I guess that's what the question gets down to. But let's assume for a moment that he goes through this first trial in May, and he's found not guilty, or he's acquitted of whatever they've accused him of. Do you still see that same trouble hanging over his head in terms of leadership?
I do think it will, and I think that looking at a criminal case is much different from what I understand. About what the Missouri legislature will decide in terms of potential impeachment proceedings. I don't know what kind of disciplinary they may or may not put forward, but, government needs to move forward. People have to have confidence in their leaders. We've got important issues to face in both our state and our federal level, and I want to get down to business and back to business and stop talking about some of these just terrible, nefarious, and awful things that may have happened in the governor's time when he was running for office or serving.
Yeah. Well, certainly this second charge that's been brought speaks more directly to when either he was running for election or not quite elected yet, but it basically is accusing him of stealing something from a computer. So I guess we may have to wait until that second trial, if it gets that far, for them to have grounds to impeach him. So it's just really a precarious position right now.
It is a precarious position. As I said, it's unfortunate for all. I've called continuously for transparent investigation. I was very disturbed by the transcripts that I read, and as I said before, I believe that Governor Greitens is unfit to lead our state. I leave it to him to decide whether he wants to resign, or for the Missouri legislature to decide whether they want to impeach him. In the meantime, we'll march ahead. We'll try and do the people's business and move above and beyond all of this.
Well, Congresswoman Ann Wagner, our guest right now. I know I have limited time here. Did you take part in this Summit of the Americas?
Wow, it was awesome, Mark. I tell you, I was a part of a bipartisan delegation, a small group of legislators, maybe 8 or so, that went down to Lima, Peru for the 8th annual Summit of the Americas. They do these every 3 years. In total, there were probably about 30 to 32 independent states that participated, and we met last Saturday with at least 8 different presidents, from Chile to Peru to Brazil to Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, you name it, and talked about issues that impact the region. It spoke a lot about democratic governance, about human rights, and they're against corruption, whether it's money laundering, human trafficking, or the transnational kind of criminal networks, narcotic trafficking that's happening. One of the days, I actually flew on the Huey helicopters deep into the jungle of Peru and saw the eradication process, actually pulled out coca plants, which are, where you derive cocaine, myself, from the root up with a group of folks. So eradication, interdiction. We then hopped back on the Hueys. I'll tell you, Mark, and went deeper into the jungle to some developing villages that are actually doing the alternative development with the cacao plants, which are the kind of what make the coffee and the chocolate, mainly chocolate out of it. So building those kinds of sustainable local economies is what it's about, and certainly our partners in Peru and Colombia and the rest of Latin America are dedicated to this, along with our USAID and State Department and the other things that we do to reinforce this, because the majority of our cocaine comes from Latin America.
Are they opposed to the wall?
No, well, yeah, I did talk with the Mexican president. He's opposed to paying for the wall, but he certainly talked a lot about our sovereignty. We had an interesting dialogue with the Hondurans when it came to illegal immigration also that got a little heated, especially on my part. I tried to focus, too, I'll tell you, on trade. Our U.S. direct investment in the region, both at a bilateral and a regional groupings level, is key, especially for Missouri. We've got over $14 billion in exports that we do into the area, mostly into probably Canada and Mexico, but a lot into Brazil, a lot into Colombia and Chile, especially when it comes to our ag exports, some of our transportation equipment, other things. So I talked a lot about trade, not just U.S. trade, but Missouri-specific trade.
Well, good. Is this something the president would normally take part in or not?
It is. He was scheduled to go, and several days out, the vice president was tapped to go instead.
Okay. All right.
He led our delegation, and it was mainly had to do with the military action and the bombing in Syria.
Sure.
The president stayed behind. The people went, and it was just an honor, very interesting and enlightening to be listening to these Latin American countries and talking even about Venezuela and the humanitarian and economic crisis there, the 3 million refugees that the Maduro regime has caused, the increase in narco trafficking that continues there. So there were a lot of topics that we covered. I learned a lot, and it was just a marvelous to be a part of. Again, exhausting. Left Friday after votes and got back in time for Monday votes. So it was like speed dating with Latin American presidents, I have to tell you.
Yeah, I'll bet it was. Yeah, no kidding. Well, good. Well, I'm glad you got to take that trip. That sounds like exciting. At least you got to express your thoughts on immigration with the delegations from Central America and Mexico. That's fantastic.
We did.
In the meantime, you and I have talked about this a lot for people that have not listened to my midday show. There was the Department of Labor ruling, and then there is this other fiduciary rule that's being considered. Maybe you can just kind of update people on where things stand with that.
Yeah, well, I've been fighting against this Obama-era regulation that was put down by the Department of Labor a number of years ago, since my time in Congress. I believe we have a savings crisis in America, and that we should make it easier and more affordable for retirees, for young people, for everyone to be saving more of their hard-earned money, and making sure that they can do it in a way that's costly, that gives them the right access to the advice they need, and increases their choice has been key to me. And so the Department of Labor ruled under the Obama administration. It's been in the courts. The good news was that the Fifth Circuit, about a month or so ago, threw out the Department of Labor's fiduciary rule. Hoo-hoo! I was so excited when that happened last month.
That's right.
And I had been working with the SEC chairman, Jay Clayton, and others to come up with a best interest standard for our broker-dealers, for our investment advisors, to bring clarity to this arena. And he has proposed something last Wednesday, April 18th, and there'll now be a 90-day comment period. But basically, it's going to deal more with titles and disclosures. It's going to make sure that people are getting the best advice possible out there when it comes to their retirement investments. And there's going to be more disclosure obligations, more care obligations when it comes to reasonable diligence and care and understanding of the products that are being offered and things of this nature. So I've always been saying this is a solution in search of a problem. I believe that most people are getting good and sound advice from their broker-dealers. There may be some confusion, but not direct harm. And I want to make sure people can save for the future and do it in a cost-effective fashion and still have a relationship with their broker-dealer, with their investment advisor. Let's put some clarity on this when it comes to disclosures and titles, and let's make sure people are saving for the future.
They need to do that. And for people who are new to my voice here on the mornings and haven't listened to the afternoon, I mean, I worked in the financial services industry for about 4 years, had a Series 7 license, learned all this stuff about it. Obviously, the DOL side of this affected your 401k and your retirement, and the SEC side of it would, I don't know, affect any brokerage account that you have where you just invest in certain stocks. And what the Obama folks really wanted to do was turn it all over to Big Brother and force additional fees, in my opinion, down the throats of smaller investors who normally wouldn't have to pay those just because of the bad actions of a few people. And I'm thrilled that you're fighting back against this, because
I have fought for 6 full years and continue to. I'm pleased that Secretary Clayton has taken some of our suggestions, some of that have stemmed from the legislation that I sponsored in the past. We are putting this fiduciary issue into the rightful regulator of broker-dealers, which is the SEC. And this is about Main Street. This is about low- and middle-income investors. This isn't about those of wealth. There couldn't be anything more Main Street than your little broker-dealer or insurance advisor on the corner across from the gas station and the Dairy Queen. So I want to make sure that people can save, and we make it easier and better and more cost-effective for them to save for their future. So we're on the right track here, and it's just taken longer than I care for.
Yeah, no kidding. It always seems to. Ann Wagner, before I run out of time here, looking forward to November, we're coming off the heels of the DNC suing Donald Trump's campaign and WikiLeaks and all this stuff, still trying to make excuses for losing the 2016 presidential election. Now we're coming up in November. There are a lot of House seats that are up in the air. Everybody's talking about this wave that's coming, but the Democrats are hurting when it comes to fundraising and a lot of other issues. What's your take on that?
They are, and they have a big internal crisis in terms of some of those, not that there's many left, of those more moderate Democrats versus the far right, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders wing of their party. So they have extreme internal difficulties, and you've seen it in some of their candidate recruitment that has happened. But everyone's got to fight to be reelected. Everyone's got to represent their constituents. Run like you're running from behind. That's how I do. Make sure that you're present and in the district, working hard, delivering for those constituents, whether it's the work I've done on human trafficking, work I've done up at the VA for our veterans, for our defense industry and the supply chain that's a part of that, or whether it's just helping that constituent that has a visa issue, a Social Security issue. Maybe they had their IRS filings hacked and stolen, and we're working on cybersecurity. Whatever it is, you have to deliver for your district. You got to work hard. You got to earn the vote, and I'm going to sure do that when it comes to my reelection campaign.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, Ann Wagner, thank you so much for being part of the kickoff of the Mark Cox Morning Show. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
And when we get those new T-shirts printed up, I'm going to make sure you get one of those as well.
Yeah, I know. I've got my own one. It's now a vintage item.
Exactly, yeah. You can get out and do your gardening in it or something. That's good.
Take care, Mark.
All right, Ann. Thank you very much. Congresswoman Ann Wagner joining us live from the swamp up in Washington, D.C. How about that? That's good stuff. We'll talk more on that DOL thing if it's something people have any interest in. I think it was a bad deal from the beginning. Here's the thing about it. If you remember that old Chevy Chase movie where he was an arms dealer and he said to somebody, no matter who loses, we win. No matter who wins, we win, because he was selling to both sides. Some of these financial services companies are making a fortune under these new rules, and they're probably not going to be anxious to go back to the way it was. That's why it wasn't a good idea to begin with. 314-241-9797.